Hi everyone, my name is Josh Ortega. I'm your LPU librarian here, and I want to go over some things for you that I think are really important for you guys for how to use the library or databases and a little bit how to find information properly. This is going to be really helpful to you guys for your time here at LPU when you're doing research. So the first thing I want to ask, how many of you guys have been to the library often or have used the online library already? Awesome, great. For those of you who haven't, if you need to set up your password, you don't know what you're doing, come by and see me. We'll help you set that up. And then, of course, we're going to go ahead right here and we're going to look at some of this stuff with you guys together. So we're going to, again, just go over some things you may know, some things you may not know about the library. And then we're going to talk about proper research in order to find things. Because when people do research, sometimes it takes them hours. And it really should be taking you minutes to find the resources that you need. And then we're going to do a little activity together. All right. So I'm going to share my screen and let's go and do this. So we're just going to jump ahead here to the next slide, just to let you guys know a little bit that the physical materials we have, you know, the stacks are down. Some we have stacks are mostly upstairs, temporary, some that are downstairs. But the physical stuff that we have, 75,000, we have the 750,000 electronics. That's stuff that we physically own. When I mean physically, I mean digitally, right? We've bought those digital books for you guys in our database. But then we have about 91 databases, which is including ones that we subscribe to and ones that are open access. Open access means that free for you. You don't have to have institutional access, as in we pay for it, or you don't have to pay for your own subscription personally. And then we have our database platforms, which are a lot of the ones that we subscribe to, which are of those 91 are housed with them, like EBSCO, ProQuest, Gale, and so forth. And then so just to let you guys know, our library hours, obviously Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. And then on Fridays, we're open 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and we are not open on weekends. So if you need to get in touch with me, you can come and visit the circulation desk. If there's a student worker there, they're more than happy to help you with anything that you need. And then, of course, my office is behind those temporary stacks. That's on the first floor. We also have our academic support staff here, Luke Cosmas, right behind my office, and then Josh Edwards up in the academic support center upstairs on the second floor of the library. And then, of course, you can always email us, library@lapacific.edu. And I'll say this really quick. We changed our policy this year. We offer free printing for anything university related. So if it's for a class, if you're an athlete, need a grade check form printed out, we'll be able to take care of that for you free of charge. Color, black and white, single-sided, double-sided, whatever. We'll take care of it for you, as long as it's school related. If it's personal, we might do it a couple times, but if you continue to do that, we'll charge you about 10 cents a page. You could always call us, although we're extension 309 for the main desk, 308 for my desk, but you probably won't be ever using that. But if you go on the library website on the homepage, sometimes a chat box will pop out and ask if you need help. So if you're remote, or you are working at home, if you're a commuter, any commuters here? Okay, well, for you commuters, you can, or if you just are in your dorm room and don't feel like walking the 2 minutes over to the library, sometimes if we're logged in, which is often, then we can definitely help you out remotely. And then through that chat feature that's there. All right, so just to remind you guys that downstairs is, except for those temporary metal shelving we call stacks, we have our reference and reserve materials downstairs. Reference, you cannot take out, neither reserve, but reserve books are actually books that professors have asked us to put aside for your classes. So that could be a required textbook or just like a supplemental text, like if you're using it for an assignment, it's there. Sometimes it's articles as well. And then, of course, if we have any new arrivals. And of course, all of our stacks upstairs, which are the ones, except for the ones down below, but all those ones that are called stacks, you can check out up to 7 of them at a time for about 2 to 3 weeks. And make sure, the only thing I want to talk about here is returning materials. Please do not reshelve the books. The Dewey Decimal System, the way it works is that if you put a book back on the shelf and it's not in the exact right place, we may never, quote unquote, may never find it. So you want to make sure that you're putting it back where it belongs. If you don't know where to, if you don't not sure where to put it, you can always find those metal carts. Those are all around the library. You can go ahead and put those books on those carts. You could also drop it in the book return at the front desk, as well as the depository chute that is on the outside library if we happen to be closed. So what I want to do now is go through a little bit of the advanced search thing and how to do an initial search. So right here is the library website. And so you see the search bar here. Now, typically what I tell students is if you're going to research something, you could type in anything you want here and hit search and it'll give you stuff. Problem is if you do that, no matter what your topic is, you're not always going to find everything you want. It may not be the right set of information. It may be talking about something completely different. It might be talking about some, like Paul the Apostle here, might be talking about, I don't know, some other guy named Paul or some other one of the apostles, because that's what it could do. So you always want to make sure that you go to advanced search. Now, of course, you have here, you could put Paul the Apostle here. But let's say you're doing about Paul the Apostle and Gentiles, right? Gentiles is a fancy word for everyone who's not a Jew. And you want to make sure that you put keywords here on each one of these, because what keywords does is it looks for Paul the Apostle and Gentiles in every part of an article or book. It could be in the title, it could be in the subsections, it could be a chapter, it could be just a sentence or two. Anything that has to do with that, it'll look for it. If it's a subject part, and so it's more broad. Whereas you have something like the subject, where it's the book, the subject is about Paul the Apostle or about Gentiles, if you designate that, or title, which means that Paul the Apostle and Gentiles is going to be in the title of the book or the article or the dissertation. And so if we were to do that, we could look that up. And we can see here that we have the mysticism of Paul the Apostle, right? And so this is a print book. Now I want to show you guys this real quick. A lot of students don't necessarily know how to find books in the library. Well, it tells you right here. It tells you that we have it here at LPU in San Dimas. And the reason why I'm pointing out San Dimas is because sometimes it'll say Virginia. And when that is obviously on the other side of the country, and you can't come into the library and get that book. And then, of course, it has the call number, which is this number here, and the cutter number. And I'll go over more of that in detail in just a little bit. But you can see here we have other resources. Of course, we have an ebook right here, which is great. And so you can go ahead and click on that, and you can view that ebook, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. But you can see these are all the results that you have here. And so you have about 1,500 results that you can sift through. Now, you can go that if you a little bit more, if you want to go just print books, right? There's that 797 down from 1,200 or 1,500. And then if you want just ebooks, it's 482. And all the different types of materials that are out there. If you want to do articles, or if, you know, so something though that you always want to make sure you do is click the full text there for your results. The reason why that is because sometimes it'll give you just the abstract, which is the summary of the entire book or article. And that's it. And that's not useful. So you can see here now, this one we saw earlier, that's great. So if you can click on that, of course, you got to be logged into your library account. So you guys can go ahead and do that. And what it'll do is it'll take you right to the platform and the database setting. Now, of course, this is a great example. ProQuest showed that we have it, but in fact, we don't, because ProQuest likes to do this. It likes to show you what they have available, not necessarily what I have available. And so you could always ask us, but the only time we'll purchase ebooks right now for students if you're doing your senior seminar capstone project. But let's go back to our results page here. And we can see that we have other options here. Let's see if we have this one. Don't have that one either. Thank you, ProQuest. What about this one? All right, this one is on EBSCO. I'm going to show you a few things. This is your description or your abstract here. And then you can even, to some degree, if you want to go to a specific chapter only, you could go ahead and just click on that part and it'll take you right to that section of the book, of the ebook. Now, of course, you have this full PDF text to download for you guys to view it. So one thing you always want to make sure is what it says right here, concurrent user level. This says unlimited user access. That means you don't have to worry about it, just anytime you want, anywhere, anybody. But sometimes that might say limited access, it might say 3 copies, might say 1 copy, which means that if it's a 1 copy, someone else is using it, you can't use it until they get off. Just like if we had only 1 copy of a textbook here in person, if someone's reading that book, you can't use it because they're using it. So it's the same principle. The other thing I want to show you guys is this little fun button right here. It's called the Cite button. This Cite button, if you click that, it has all the different formats that you will need in order to do your reference page, works cited, bibliography, whatever format you're doing it in. Copy and paste it in there and go for it. And that's a really great tool. All of our platforms have that, to where you could just cite that right then and there, and takes a lot of the work out. Okay, so that's the basics of advanced search. And we'll get back to a little bit more of that in just a minute. So I mentioned earlier that call number and that cutter number. And as you can see from that page, they're on our physical books. And we have a video out on Instagram that Student Life has also reposted. And if you haven't seen that, go ahead and go to the Student Life account or the Life Library account and view that video, because it shows you how to find books, and it shows you how to use these numbers here, which is the Dewey Decimal System, call number and cutter numbers. And it's a little bit different. It's in descending order essentially. So you have a 2, a 7, a 0, a dot, and then a 1, and then an E, and then an 8, a 9, and an 8. And you have to go 1 letter or 1 number to the right at a time in order to find the book properly. So if it's 270.2 and you need the 270.1, you know you've gone too far, you got to go left. Same thing with the other numbers. If you're looking at 270.1 and you go to H, you know you've gone too far, you got to go to the left. Or if you have 270.1 A, then you know you got to go to the right. And so that is basically how that works. Now, a little bit more on searching here that I want to get to is when you're doing articles for your searches, the thing that you have to remember is that when you're looking at all these different things to do, you might be thinking, well, Josh, how am I supposed to find 5 to 6 resources? And you said earlier it takes minutes, not hours. Well, the difference here is that when you look at all these different things, and if they're articles or whatnot, and ebooks, especially articles, let's go back here and let's go up to articles. So let's go to article. So now we have 309 results. And so basically what we want to show here is that when you're doing articles, the best thing to do is to read the abstract, so you get an idea of what the whole thing is about, then read the introduction of the article, and then the conclusion. And the reason why you do that is professors never expect you to read the entire thing all the time. They only expect you, and that would just be a joke. That would be not fair. So you can see we have an abstract here. Here's the introduction. You can scroll all the way down, all the way, all the way, all the way, all the way to the conclusion. And you read this part. And if it looks good, and it's like, all right, this is going to help prove my point, then you could use that. And you could start highlighting, as you can see here, and you can get here's the citation thing right here. You can click that, get the citation. So what I like to do is hit that Cite button, open a Word doc, copy and paste that in here, and copy that onto the Word document, and then start taking my notes later, right? I'll just make a list of all the reference work. And then when I'm ready, I'll go back to this and I'll read the part that's called the discussion. And that's where they start to tell you their findings or any conclusions that they're making in the article, or basically all the information you're going to want to write your research paper. And the great thing about that is then I'll start taking my notes and I'll paraphrase it. And so then when I'm actually writing my research paper, I'll paraphrase my paraphrase. And what that does is when I'm quoting things, it'll help get rid of any sort of plagiarism that I could possibly do. Unless, of course, I'm doing a direct quote, and I'll just do that and cite it properly. So that's a couple tips that you guys can do when you're looking at this. And so the next thing I want to look at, if you have questions, you can always email me, come talk to me. So the next thing I want to do is talk about these searching as strategic exploration. So when you're doing research, the first thing you want to do is pick a topic and then ask a question about that topic. So an example of that would be, how do Pentecostal churches help youth kids with anxiety? Be anything you want. It doesn't have to be about church. It could be about sports. It could be about psychology, more different psychology stuff. It could be about clothes. It could be about movies. It doesn't really matter. You can answer any question this way. And so the next thing that you do is you look at the subjects in that question. So how many questions, or sorry, how many subjects do you guys see in that sentence? Take a look. Now I see at least 3. And if you look at it a certain way, you could probably even go 4, maybe 5, depending on how you look at it. Pentecostal churches, youth kids, and anxiety. If you want to break it up further, Pentecostal churches, youth kids, anxiety, or Pentecostal churches, youth, kids, and anxiety. Again, it's all about how, well, honestly, you use commas there and how you read that or how you're intending to write that sentence. And so basically what you do is you take those and you put them in the search engine in the advanced search, just like we did earlier. And then you see the results. But here's the thing. What if you're not getting any of the results that you need? Well, what you do is you take those terms, and I put them here for you, and you say, well, are there any synonyms, synonymous terms that are with these 3? Think about that. Pentecostal churches. How about Christian church? That's what we call making it broad. Christian is a broad term because Christian can mean lots of things, except Mormons. Mormons aren't Christians. But anyway, Pentecostal churches can be very specific or narrow because it's a very specific kind. Now, if you want to get more narrow, you can go charismatic church. If you want to go more narrow, you think Foursquare church. And with youth, that kind of is a little bit of a broad term. A broader term could be adolescence. With youth, a more narrow term could be something like a teenager or a high school student. Anxiety, mental health could be a more broad term. Anxiety is pretty specific because it's a specific issue with mental health and mental disorders. So those are all ways to do synonyms. Now, when you're in that search bar, you'll notice back there, and I'll just bring it back up again, that we had, when we did our advanced search, let's go all the way back to the advanced search here. Let's just go do advanced search again. As you can see here, we have these here, and obviously this one, Gentiles will be here, but we have and, or, and not. And those are all operators. Basically, we need to tell the search engine where to go and how far we want it to go. And so what direction we want to go is our search terms. And how we want it to get there is our operators. And as you can see here, there's and, or, and not. And is a more narrow search, as in it's going to only try to find things that have those search terms in them, and that's it. Especially if you go something like title, it's only going to go those 2 things in the title. If you use or, it's going to broaden that because, like, let's say you're doing Pentecostal churches for how they help youth kids with anxiety. Well, how about Pentecostal churches and Catholic churches, right? So if you wanted to do, you would put in the search engine, you would put Pentecostal church, then you would put or Catholic churches, and then you could put and mental health and youth, something like that. And it's going to give you results that are just Pentecostal, just Catholic, or both together. Maybe a compare contrast article there. And then you have not. That excludes certain results. So again, going back with our church example there, if you want to do Pentecostal church, but you want to exclude having any articles that have anything to do with the Catholic Church in them, it's going to take those results away and give you less results, right? Because that is a the and will narrow the search results because it's staying within the confines of what you're asking. Or is going to broaden that, and then not is going to exclude that. So the next thing I want to talk about is grappling with authority. So this is you can guys read this while I talk, but basically what this is talking about is authority is talking about where information comes from and what makes it reliable and credible, right? What makes it have credibility and how do you know that it's reliable? And there's a lot of ways that we can show that. And so some of the ways that we talk about doing this in determining authority is one is currency. How old can your required information be? And how old is it really if you're looking at results? So typically, right, when you have information and resources that are out there, typically 5 to 10 years is the norm. As far as, so you shouldn't be looking at, unless it's for historical purposes, you really should, or other reasons close to that. But for the most part, you shouldn't be looking at, like, let's say we don't have medical fields here beyond psychology, but let's say if anyone knows what bloodletting is, bloodletting is a medical procedure from colonial times and before, where they would, if you were sick with a virus, like let's say the common cold even or the flu, they would cut you open or stick needles in you to let your blood flow out. And then because the virus is infecting you, it's in your blood, you drain out the blood with the infection in it or the virus in it, and then you no longer have it in your body. And that is partially how George Washington, one of our first president and one of our founding fathers, passed away because he was sick. They bloodlet him, bloodlet him too much, he couldn't recover, and he died. So yeah, I don't know about you, but that's not relevant information anymore. And a book that we might have discussing it from the 1800s or the 1700s is not going to be current. We want to have medical information that's current. There's even procedures nowadays, even in childcare, that 4 years ago was the way to go, and they found better procedures on how to do it now. And so psychology majors that are in the room, business majors that are in the room, 5 years, because information changes so quickly. Relevance, does this resource answer your question? That's a big deal. I mentioned earlier about looking at the abstract, the introduction, and the conclusion. And if it all answers the question, then it's good to go. That's one of the first steps you do when determining if it's worth for you to use in your research. But it's also good for determining its authority. Now, authority here, who is the source of the information, is a big deal. I usually like to talk about TikTok here because on TikTok, anybody can throw anything on TikTok, and because it's there, people say, well, it must be true, right? If it's on the internet, it must be true. That's something that we used to say when I was in college because the internet was still kind of, even to some degree, still taking off. About 10 years before that, it was when it first got real big. But as far as when it comes to research, it was still taking off. And so basically, what we're looking at here is you're trying to look at where is this information coming from? Because like I said, on TikTok, anybody can do anything. And what people are saying is that in the past, so even in stuff about the Bible, right? Like trying to prove the Bible is being real, right? Archaeology and all this kind of stuff, right? It's because there's a lack of information about it that makes the Bible less authoritative to people that are not of faith. They don't believe that the Bible's the word of God. So there has to be some other proof for it, some other way to make it truthful and authoritative. Well, that would be archaeological evidence to back up some of the things that are claimed in the Bible. And let's be honest, there's a lot of things coming out more and more year to year about that. But what people are getting at is that there's nothing to back this up. What's the source of that? Because they don't believe in God, so that can't be the source. And so they're saying that because there's so little information out there, it's hard to tell what's real history. But what they're saying is because of social media and things like TikTok and YouTube and stuff like that, that in 100, 200 years down the road from now, when they look back on our time today when social media became big in the last 15 years, that they're gonna have a hard time determining what is truth and not truth because there's too much information, which in the past there's too little information to tell what's true. And that's mind-boggling to me that there's just so much out there that they're not going to be able to tell what's true, and it's going to be harder to tell. And so we want to make sure that we're understanding where that information is coming from. Now, of course, accuracy, is this information correct? So you guys would call this fact checking, right? Is this information correct? And you could always corroborate that by looking at other articles and other studies that are along the same lines. And then purpose, why was this information presented this way? And so you can determine that. Again, I'll say this all the time. Nothing is completely unbiased or 100% unbiased for the most part, as far as humans, because we always have a purpose for everything. Okay. So when determining authority, some things you can ask yourself, is this a personal page or a website? Again, TikTok. Don't listen to them. How many times I've seen videos of people try to explain away the Bible, and I can pick apart their argument so easily because it's just some random person. In fact, a little controversial here. But I remember seeing this video, this TikTok video, I mean, I'm not sure who he is, but apparently he's pretty big in the community, but LGBT community, but he read the scripture of Jesus calling Lazarus out of the grave and raising him from the dead. And he says, Lazarus, come out. And so this guy proceeds to tell everybody that it is proof in the Bible about how Jesus wants people to be LGBTQ. And of course, that's ridiculous. Jesus never says anything like that. They didn't even know what that was back then, per se, like people do now. And so that's a guy that's doing it on his own personal page. He's got no credibility. So you want to make sure that you're sticking to things that are peer-reviewed, academic journals, published by reputable publishers, all that kind of stuff. I get stuff in the mail monthly, weekly, sometimes, of people who just say, I think you should have this book because it's really good and it serves this purpose, and put it in your library. And they self-publish. So of course, in the trash it goes. All right. Who is the creator of this information? Just like I said, who is the creator? Do they have credibility? Can you go to a biography or about us on the creator? And the great thing about some of our library resources that we have, so if you go back to the search page here, and you were to go back here and see the results, what you can actually do is you can click on the author here. It's a link, and what that does is everything that Albert Schweitzer, everything that this person wrote is going to be listed here. This person did quite a bit, so I would probably think this person knows what they're doing, and that creator has some sort of authority to what they have to say. Not just because they publish a lot of things doesn't necessarily mean they know it all. But here's the next thing on top of that. Is that person an authority in their field? So Professor Stoke does not have a medical degree. And if she does, well, made a fool out of me. But to my knowledge, she does not have one. So I'm not going to go to her and say, Christina, I'm having this medical issue. My knee's killing me. Can you tell me how to cure that pain? Now, she might say, well, we should just take some Tylenol. But if she's going to start giving me some medical jargon about how I should do physical therapy and do these exercises, as much as I trust her, I don't trust her in that regard. And I think she understands me when I say that. And so I'm going to go to who? That's right. I'm going to go to a doctor, and I'm going to ask them. And then to some degree, I might go to a specialist. I have a sister-in-law who's a doctor, a mother-in-law who's a nurse, and a future brother-in-law who's a surgeon. So yeah, I go to them all the time when I got some sort of weird pain I've never felt before, because that's what happens as you get older. or it lingers too long, longer than I think it should, or whatever. I'm not going to go to Christina. Sorry, Christina, you're not worth it. Now, when it comes to things like ministry and all that kind of stuff and music, like, yeah, I'll go to Christina. She's great at that stuff. And she's great at a lot of things, but not medical stuff. And so when you're looking at that, though, do they have a degree? Like I said, I'm going to trust someone with a PhD in medicine rather than someone in biblical studies to help me if my appendix might have burst, right? So are they qualified? That next point. Like I said, my future brother-in-law is a surgeon, so he'd be perfect. He's done an appendix removal in I think 11 minutes or something like that was his personal best. That's fast. And so that's what you want to look for. Now, here's the other thing about site domains, right? .edu, .com, .gov, .org, .net. I'm going to tell you right now, .edu, .gov, and .org are the three best, probably in that order. .com and .net, I'd probably stay away from for the most part, unless it's something. But most of the good ones, if they're even good at all, are going to be .org. But like I said, .gov is good and .edu is the best because guess what? All those people get their degrees from, they get published. And they go through a university in order to do that. And so that means no Wikipedia. No Wikipedia. Do not cite Wikipedia. That's awful. I don't even know if it's a .com. It could be a .org for all I know, but I think it's .com. But anyway, don't go there. You could use it as what I would use Wikipedia for is the same way that I would tell you to use AI. Is that if you don't understand the concept that you have to write about, it'll give you a great summary. And so that's what that's good for. Because the thing about AI is it pulls from everywhere. Who knows where? Someone's X account, someone's Facebook post, some random article that someone posted on Newsweek, right? Or I don't know, whatever. And then it just pulls it all together, it makes it look good, and you don't know where you're getting that information from. You don't know if the person that wrote that information is credible. You don't know if the website that you got that information from is credible or worth it or reliable. Could be anywhere. So just make sure that you're looking at that. And so finally, what you guys are going to do, and your professor will help facilitate this at the end, you're going to get into groups or pairs, depending on how many you are. And you're going to ask a question just like I did earlier about any topic. Pick whatever you want. And then you're going to look at the nouns in that. Again, 3 to 4 is good. And create those as search terms. Now, if you need to go synonymous terms or not, you probably won't, but there's possibility depending on your topic. You might have to do that. So then you're going to go that and do that into the advanced search bar like I showed you. And then you're going to find at around 3 to 4 peer-reviewed materials. I'm going to say articles specifically because there is that peer-reviewed, which is down here usually, but it's also on the initial search page in the bottom. So if you go here, you go to search, it's this first one right here. Always make sure you check that. And you can put in all that kind of stuff like the annuals, like the year and stuff like that. 2014 would be the farthest back. Any of that kind of stuff you could just put in right here to make sure you got that. So you're going to find 4 peer-reviewed materials about the topic using the search terms. And then once you find those 4, you got to make sure and confirm that they are authoritative by some of the ways in which we just showed. Your professor will have this PowerPoint just in case you need to go back to some of the slides that are there. And so what you're going to do then is once everyone's done, your professor will help go through and you'll present 1, what was your question? 2, what were your search terms? 3, what were your articles that you found or materials that you found? And then 5, how did you know? What are the ways? Did you look at the author and do a little bit of data mining and looking into their history and all that kind of stuff? Is it a peer-reviewed article or is it a great publisher? All that kind of stuff. Is it recent, right? All those things that we saw earlier, these ones right here. This is how you prove it, right? And then you're going to present all your groups are going to present each one of those and to your professor, and that'll be it. So that's where I leave you guys off today. Your professor will put up the last slide of this PowerPoint so you guys can see that and continue to work. And if you have any questions, go ahead and stop by my office, give me a call, or send me an email. Thanks, guys.